Hi everyone, before we jump into this week's episode, I wanted to remind you about the Systems and Processes Health Check that I now offer. This is an 8-week program where we work together one-on-one to look at the systems and processes in your business. I've been working with several designers already on this and they are seeing real results, real tangible results in the 8 weeks and making big differences to their business. If you would like to work with me through the 8-week health check, please follow the link in the show notes or you can find more information on my website. I'm looking forward to working with you.
It affects the outcome. Client doesn't know. They're not an interior designer. If they were, they wouldn't have engaged you and they have no idea how the process works, how many steps and what's needed. So it's up to the service provider, whether you're an interior designer, web designer, whatever you do, it should be the same onboarding process for everyone. And we've been, 5 years now with the exact same process that we tweak and refine. Don't have issues. I don't have the challenges because everyone gets the same thing.
Hi, I'm Beth, the founder of More Time to Design and your host of the Design Dialogues podcast. I've been a designer for the last 12 years and I've run my own studio for 5. And I know how hard it is to run a successful business. You not only need to be great at designing, but you need to be great at all the other things as well. I created More Time to Design, a software platform to help designers run efficient studios, and I've created the Design Dialogue podcast to help us all learn together. Each week, we will meet professionals who are at the top of their game doing things that help us run our studios. We'll have conversations with social media managers, interior design mentors, copywriters, stylists, photographers, suppliers, and also designers who have been in the game for a long time and who have such a wealth of knowledge to share. I hope that each week you feel inspired and informed at the end of each of our design dialogues. So join me for the Design Dialogue podcast.
Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Design Dialogues podcast. I am really excited by today's guest. I am joined by Kate Addamo. Hi Kate.
Hi Beth, thank you so much for having me.
So I was just saying before we got started that having spoken to a couple of your clients and also some people that are working with you currently, I just knew I had to get you on the podcast because what you talk about just resonates so much with me. So I'm really looking forward to exploring all of that with you today. So to start with, I always love to find out, what can you see out your window?
Oh, good question. I can see a row of gardenias and camellias, a beautiful pot with some purple pansies, magnolia, and a vegetable garden bed that is being prepared and about to be planted, and a blue sky, which I love from this office.
Oh, beautiful. What a beautiful outlook. So for those of you who don't know, tell me, who is Kate Addamo and what do you do?
Oh, big question. Okay, so I've been mentoring mostly women and creatives for the last 7 years. I've had quite a diverse background across sales, construction, property styling. I used to manage a styling company in Melbourne. So quite a diverse career. And I think that has led me to this place that just feels really at home for me. I love creativity. I love process. I love structure. Bit of a unicorn of sort of left and right brain. And come from that place of being a real nurturer. My star sign is a Cancer. I really love taking care of people. And this just feels like the most, incredible role that I could be doing. And I feel very fortunate to be able to support women in that. And so I've been mentoring for almost 7 years. I run retreats, host a podcast, Life and Business in Flow, and just really help people with the foundations of their business. So supporting the woman behind the brand, which is a big part of it, working through actual brand, process, in like boundaries, systems, finances, cash flow, incredibly holistic. Like honestly, I'm happy to chat about everything. It can be anything from BAS to cycle planning, your hormones and everything in between. I'm just here for any way that I can help my clients.
Yeah. So, oh my goodness, so many questions. So the thing that really, I think, sparked my initial interest in the way you do things and think is I was talking to someone who you are currently working with, and she was like, I've had my first consultation and we were talking about business, but also family and my health. And all of that kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like it is so refreshing to hear people talk about how when it comes to thinking about small business and your own business, you can't just think about that in a silo. Like you have to think about the whole picture. And yes, for both men and women, but I think for women in particular, there is so many factors into it about what is success? What is success at the moment in your life? What else have you got going on? Like, how does that all flow in together? So I think it's so refreshing to have that perspective.
Yeah.
How did you come to realize that that was so important?
It was something that it sort of happened to me, to be honest. Like, and when I started this business, I was quite unwell. I had severe adrenal fatigue. I found out some years later, really bad hormone imbalances, migraines, which you and I have chatted about. All of those things can just really make things really difficult. And from early on in this business, I knew that I had to start things very differently. I'd worked across sales. I'd worked for other people for the first, I can't remember, let's say 15 years of my career, worked in my masculine, was all about the hustle, the burnout, grew up with brothers on a farm. I grew up very masculine, and I worked out how much wasn't working for me. And I spent a lot of my 30s trying to undo that. And so coming from that place of starting a business, of being unwell, I realized that I had to do things differently. I had to be very smart. I had to be proactive. I had to be fierce with my time. I had to have good boundaries and just systems, and things had to flow really well. So it was from that place. And I remember just being really frustrated for the first couple of years, and then being on a call with a mentor at one point and actually having tears run down my face, because I realized at that moment I was grateful for it and it switched. Because if I hadn't been through this, I would have continued the way I was, might have coached people in that way as well, because we all know when we're seeing the hustle culture being shoved down our throats everywhere on social media. And I really feel that this is part of my purpose to reframe that, because so many women in my world have placed their value on work solely. I lost my mum last year to cancer. All of her value was on work. Mine probably was, until I learnt to unravel this. I lost another best friend suddenly at 41 with a heart attack last year, didn't look after herself. It was all about work. And I just want things to be different for women, for us to shape and frame businesses around the season of life that we're in, what we value, what matters to us, to put us first, to work on our health, to work on our business, have great foundations, and then, look at the client journey as well. But I think there's too much of a focus on the client, not on the running the business and not on ourselves. So yeah, there's so much more I could say about that, but yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. There's so much of that resonates. Like I have, I suppose, a similar experience in that my mum had a really major health incident. She had a stroke, and she was, she very much had that, I suppose, thinking from her generation of, I'll rest when I retire and I'll do things when I retire and all this kind of stuff. And she had her stroke at work. So she never got to retire. She just went from, working to having great impacts on her life and quality of life. And I think that has really framed a lot of my thinking around how I work now and my perspective on things. And I had it, I suppose, a bit before that as well, but it definitely sharpens the focus.
It does.
But then I think as well, having kids and all of that kind of stuff, really understanding that success is so individual, and it is also not set in stone. Like what success means like at one season of your life is so different from what success will look like in another season of your life. And working that out and being happy with that, and kind of just running your own race. Like I have written down in numerous places, like I'm just running my own race. I'm in my lane and that's my lane, and it doesn't really matter what anyone else is doing. But I think so often saying that, but then also living that is two very different things.
It is. And you've got to be really sure on who you are and where you're going, because it's very easy to get caught in the noise of I'm behind and I should have done, and why haven't I launched, and I should be further because of all the things we're seeing. I have just really put my blinkers on and just went, what do you need your life to look like, Kate? What feels good to you? What does success feel like? And I have really gone slower, and I've said no to a lot of opportunities. It's only recently I've said yes to being interviewed on podcasts. I'm doing a speaking event soon. Some other things are coming up. But I had said no because in the first 7 years, I was deeply working on myself, my business, healing. I was nursing mum through that, losing her. I just knew that there was a period of this chapter that had to just be slow, and making it through that felt like success at that point in time. And I think success doesn't have to be monetary as well. I think I see people out there slaving and grinding and making all this money, but they're disconnected from their husband. They never see their children. They're really unhappy. Their health's not good. And I think for me, inner peace and a calm nervous system, which I've got to that place now, it's taken a while, means more to me than any monetary figure. And I think, because touching on what you were saying just before, Beth, is, with that looking to retire, old age is a privilege. It's not guaranteed. And everything that my husband and I are doing right now is for what it might look like if we had kids, if we were grandparents, what 70 and 80-year-old Kate and Adrian would look like. We're working on that now. I hear from so many women, if I get sick, I'll worry about it then. Okay. But I don't think you've actually seen, and you and I have had, I'm almost going to say, a privilege of seeing that and having a wake-up call early on. And I think we're actually lucky that we've seen, because so many people don't, and they don't place an importance until it's too late.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting. Like, similar to you, I have lost a friend who, she was 40, 41, 42 when she passed away. Mm-hmm. And that in itself is a massive wake-up call when you do start to realize that age, getting old, is a privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a real wake-up call.
Mm.
How do you help people work through all of that baggage? Because as you say, it is kind of a privilege in a way to have had those experiences, but it's not a nice privilege. Like, it's, like I'm sure we both wish there were other ways we could have learned that lesson. How do you help people who haven't had that personal experience see and reframe that kind of thinking?
Yeah, it's one that I've refined over the years, and I feel like even this year I've just dropped into it even deeper, and that's the Flourish program that I take women through over 6 months, and it's really life and business, and it's really holistic. And I always start with the woman and supporting the woman behind the brand, because it has to be framed there. And what do you value, and what matters, and what do you want life to look like, and what vision are we holding? Because then that frames how we run the business. And so many times people have come to me and said, Kate, I want to grow my business. I want to do this. I want to get a bigger studio, a bigger team. And they'll go through the whole thing and they unpack it all and they go, that's actually the furthest thing from what I want. I want peace of mind. I want to actually shrink the studio a little bit, shrink the staff, really aligned clients, charging correctly, great systems, and then having some peace and some space in their week to be the mum that they want to be, to see their friends, to actually have a life, to date their husband, to do the things that really matter, rather than just the rat race of success to hit a monetary goal, which isn't that fulfilling sometimes anyway.
Yeah. I loved something that I've seen on your website about having clear vision, strong boundaries, and solid foundations. And I think that like so much of this comes down to actually knowing what you want. Like, so often for women, particularly, I think this most probably applies to a lot of creative industries, but I think for a lot of women, they come to an interior design studio or they start their own studio because they want freedom and flexibility around generally caring duties, whether that's for small children or old parents, but they want that freedom and flexibility. And then anyone who's run a small business for even a short amount of time will realize that freedom and flexibility is usually the last thing you get from having a small business. But I thought that you kind of summarized that really well about if you know what your vision is, and having strong boundaries then to help you make sure you see that vision, but then having the solid foundations. And that is, I so often talk about systems and processes are the foundations of a strong business. And really, you can have all the vision in the world and you can have all the boundaries, but if you still kind of like, if it's still murky when you're actually doing the business and you don't have those strong foundations, it's not going to work.
No, it doesn't. And it's something that I have put myself through over the last few years and tried and tested to now be able to share it with my clients, because business is one part, but life's another part, and life can be tricky and there can be external challenges. And I remember, COVID and moving back home to Queensland, and my husband quitting full-time work basically the week COVID started, his income being knocked out for the year because he was going to start a business that he couldn't start, and the pressure on me, and then, the moving home and resetting up our life, and mum being unwell and nursing her. She was living with me while I was running the business. It felt a little bit chaotic at times in my life, but I was so grateful for the foundations in my business at that time, which got me through. And also, as a woman who turned 40 last year, at about 38, 39, I started looking at, right, we're about halfway through here. We've learned some lessons. What are we going to do differently? What is 40 going to look like? And I really put a lot of thought into that, and set a really clear vision for my life. And then the last couple of years, even more so this last 12 to 18 months since losing mum, I've had the space to now deeply drop into that. And our home, our finances, our planning, our automation, like even clients or friends come here and they'll see my pantry or linen cupboard or the house and how at peace it feels, because that's an important foundation to me. The house flows beautifully. Our finances are all organized, all of our life admin, and then the business, because if one's a mess, the other's a mess, and it flows back and forth. So I've had the vision, I've set up the foundations, I've got the strong boundaries to make it all work. And I honestly feel the most at peace I ever have in my whole life. And it just feels now like I can step into an even bigger chapter with this, because I have the clarity, the headspace, and it's set up. And that's something I want for women, because it's not something I often see. I often see a lot of chaos and just on a treadmill and trying to make it work and juggling and running from one thing to the next. And I look at that and I just think, I don't want any part of that. I want to teach other women how to basically break that cycle and do it differently.
Yeah. And you touched on something just there which totally resonates with me. And I contrasted, I suppose, to how my husband works. So my husband has an amazing ability, and I'm in some ways very envious of him, to switch off, to switch into work mode and switch into house mode or family mode kind of thing. And he can have the door closed, the house can be a shambles, there can be kids screaming, there can be a million family admin stuff, but he is in work mode and he is great to go. I, on the other hand, I can't do that. It is so intermixed together. If the kitchen is a mess, I just can't do it. Like if I can't work, if that's a mess, I can't really focus on work. If there's work stuff, I can't focus on family stuff. And so that connection between not just your business being set up well, but life being set up well, and I suppose the business just being one part of life, I think that is something we don't always give enough thought to as well.
No, I don't think there is. And I think people also think they've got to be 9 to 5, Monday to Friday with clients. There's a lot of that. And I start to talk to clients about their ideal week and really unraveling the way it is and setting it up to work for them. And, for example, I don't ever do things, like very, very rarely before lunch on a Monday or 11 o'clock. That would be my earliest. Monday mornings, I'm resetting, making sure everything's good. I do a lot of my planning on the Friday, but resetting the house. At the end of the day, my desk is cleared. I even get my water bottle ready for the next day here. It's clear and tidy. I like to just do those little extra steps to then make it easier that next day and make it a little bit more proactive. And I think it's important to just sometimes think, what else could we do to make it easier? But I completely appreciate that. My husband's the same, although he's pretty good at keeping things tidy, but they can just shut the door. Whereas if kitchen sink's a mess, I can't work. I don't know what happens to our brain. Why does it not work? Can't work in clutter.
I know. I always joke. So my husband, like he's a big cyclist. He's a big champion of me. Like he's always like, you need to go for a walk, like go kind of thing. And I was like, yes, but you don't seem to understand. I will feel anxious for the whole time I'm on the walk because I know I'm going to walk back into a messy house. I have to tidy the house first before I can go on the walk, because then I know I'm going to come home and I'll be calm. And I just think that's such an interesting dynamic that I don't think I would be unique in that kind of thing. But I also, I am a bit like you. I like Monday mornings to be like kind of free and not kind of packed with meetings and stuff, because like for me, I have a weekend with the kids, getting them to school on Monday morning. I'm like, I need a couple of hours to
Nice.
like, yeah, and like just get to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm ready to like transition from family life into work life and all that kind of stuff. And I think you touched on it before. Those moments of transition between the parts of your life, I think, are really interesting as well. I think having time in your day to transition is really important and helps, as you said, that flow between all the parts of your life.
Yeah, it does. And I even talk to some women about, when they're going to school pickup, maybe getting changed out of their work clothes. It's like a mental thing. Or is there a song they play at the end of it? It's like sometimes there's got to be a mental switch, just like, right, I'm leaving that bit behind and I'm going to the next bit. And there's no judgment, or I'm not missing out, or I shouldn't still be working. This other part of my day is just important as the other, like being mum.
Yeah. And I think that's something that I have worked on a little bit more as like my eldest son particularly, he's very he now comments, he's like, Mum, you're always on the phone. Or I was actually at Book Week a couple of weeks ago and I was there, but I was on a call and I had my earpods in and I was like, he won't notice, like I'm looking at him, I'm like waving and stuff. And he said to me afterwards, he goes, Mum, you're on a call the whole time. And I was like, oh, okay, buddy. And I'm just like, I know that I need to get better at switching between kind of thing and not trying to juggle, because you're not doing either very well and you always end up feeling a bit ratty and not great afterwards kind of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think as women, sometimes we struggle with those transition periods.
Yeah, I would
So
agree.
tell me about what are some of the things that you help people when they first start with you to kind of get into this kind of defining success for them?
I've got a pretty sort of set process and almost like a little workbook that I take people through now. Like I've really worked that out and refined it with Flourish since I relaunched that a few months ago. And it's just an experience of helping them to connect back to themselves. Who was the woman behind the brand years ago? What does she love doing? What has she forgotten? And I've got clients that are now out, horse riding or painting or playing with clay or just doing some things that they love. I think we've got to find that creativity and that joy, because I see a lot of women coming to me and there's no joy anywhere. Like they can't remember the last time they went on a weekend or a date with their husband. They're running from school drop off to work to school pickup to soccer training to dinner to there just being zero joy. And I'm just trying to get women to find some joy and some space back in their weeks to even think about and reflect differently. And just sometimes it's really holding that mirror up that people really need. It's like, oh, isn't this how it's supposed to be? No, it's actually not. That's overwhelming, or that's exhausting, or no, you don't have to take clients at 9 o'clock Monday morning. And I see a lot of that from people who are like, well, that's what I did when I was working for someone, so why wouldn't I do it now? Well, no, we've created this beautiful opportunity to have some flow in our weeks, but they don't realize that sometimes until you take them through that. So it's quite a sort of step, and we go through a number of different things, but it's really quite holistic in really getting women to connect back to themselves, find out what matters, what they value, and what they want this next season of their life to look like. And then we frame out what the business is going to look like from there.
Yeah, I think that's so good. I think the other thing that, and I'm sure you see this in your coaching and with your clients, is that I think sometimes as women, we struggle to admit that it's okay for it to actually feel good. That if we don't have to feel like we're hustling and that we're juggling and like that we get to a Friday afternoon and we're absolutely like just exhausted and shattered. Like I think that's such a, I don't know if it's like a social media thing or like it's just that mentality that is around life these days, that it has to be chaos and all that kind of stuff. I think giving ourselves permission to build these lives that instead that you get to Friday and you're like, I am calm, I'm relaxed, I've had a great week. Like it's actually okay to be like, to have those weeks.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes as women, we don't give ourselves permission to do that.
No. And then we do, and we think we're doing it wrong, because this has come up with a number of clients that I've got to that place where they're actually starting to be more at peace. Things are flowing well. They've got great structure and foundations in their business. And then because there's actually some space, it's like, well, one, I don't know what to do with myself, so I might go back to work, or two, or scroll or go watch Netflix, but still not the things we fully enjoy. Or I've had a few women just say, but if I'm not working, it means I'm lazy, or social media says I've always got to be busy, or I'm not successful. And I've had some women actually get kind of upset, but a little bit like, I've done this work and now I've got to this place, but then I get on social media and I don't feel like I'm enough. And that really frustrates me. We've done this work. And then there's this toxic messaging out there screaming at women, if you're not hustling, you're not growing, you don't have an online course, you're not hitting six figures, the noise, you're not a success. But their children might have less anxiety because mum's more available. They might be able to cook better food, which is something that matters. They might have gone away for that weekend with their husband, and they might now be working on their business a lot more, and they're a lot happier. But society says you're not enough because you're not grinding. And that's a frustrating thing to see as well.
Yeah, and it's so I know, you kind of see it and you're like, you don't have to work a 15-hour day. Like, that isn't success. Like, yeah,
What's it?
it's definitely something that I think it's such a negative that we have,
Yeah.
a negative message we have out there at the moment.
Yeah.
One of the other things that, like, you talk about is having strong boundaries. And I hear from a lot of interior designers. So, we work on our clients, usually our clients' biggest asset. There's always a lot of money and emotion involved in these projects that we work on. And so often I hear designers talk about how they've got these boundaries, they've got these systems and processes set up. And then a client comes along and they very quickly become a yes person. And it's, yes, we can do that. And yes, I'll answer text on a Sunday afternoon. And all of this work that they've put in just disappears. How do you, how should people think about that? And how do we avoid easily becoming those yes people and kind of sticking to those boundaries that we've actually set?
Yeah, it's a great question. I actually recorded a guest episode with someone else this morning. We spoke a little bit about this as well, because something that's very important, and it's coming up a lot, and something I've been very strong on. And, speaking to designers about it last week and new clients, the onboarding seems to be one of the biggest issues that people get wrong. And it actually is the make or break and sets the tone for the whole project. So if we're not charging up front, having great contracts, questionnaires, if we need to do all of these things at the beginning in the onboarding phase, and I think sometimes they're glossed over, just need to get people in, get it signed, let's just make this happen. And then from that place of it being a bit rushed, not slowing it down, not going to the depth that it needed to be, we've sort of shown that we can turn things around quickly. We don't value our time. Maybe there wasn't payment in advance. And I think it's important to teach the client how to teach us, and we set the tone from the beginning. And it can just unravel from there. We didn't do the work at the beginning, so now we didn't ask the right questions. We might have more issues with refinements. We then might have more issues because we didn't listen to the client in the beginning, and we can't invoice because we need to rework on this, or they don't want to pay on time because we didn't teach them they had to do that. So a lack of boundaries honestly leads to challenges with your mental health. It slides into your family life. It massively affects cash flow because you're not invoicing on time because you didn't get that phase of the design job out on time. And it has a flow-on effect that ruins the whole thing, and it can affect the client's experience. It can affect your reputation, them coming back, the retention. And I think people don't realize the importance of the onboarding and the tone that it sets. And also teaching clients that you, as the service provider, provide the container of how it needs to work. Because without that, we skip steps. It affects the outcome. Client doesn't know. They're not an interior designer. If they were, they wouldn't have engaged you, and they have no idea how the process works, how many steps and what's needed. So it's up to the service provider, whether you're an interior designer, web designer, whatever you do, it should be the same onboarding process for everyone. And we've been, 5 years now with the exact same process that we tweak and refine. Don't have issues. I don't have the challenges because Everyone gets the same thing. There's no, oh, it's a friend of someone, so I'm just going to do this and I'm just going to do that and I just won't charge that and I'm just going to get completely screwed over, because that's exactly what happens every time. We allow that, window, it gets taken advantage of. And that's what I'm really big on teaching my clients. If you want good cash flow, to invoice on time and have peace of mind, and clients that respect you, because without that parameters and boundaries, it's sort of like with children. You've got to give them that. Otherwise they'll push them and they don't know where to go. Like, they can push them, but you've got to hold them firm.
Yeah. And I think, like, love everything you're saying. I think so often as well, so much of that comes down to thinking of yourself as a business owner, general manager, CEO, whatever one you want to call it. That onboarding stuff, having those maybe tough conversations with new clients, it's a real mindset thing. And it's I would quite often say, until you've kind of got them signed and the deposits in the door, you're actually not an interior designer. You're like a head of sales. And you've got to have that part of your brain on, kind of thing. And so I think, you're right. So often you need to set those boundaries clearly and strongly, and you might need to say it a few times for the client to hear, so that you are setting the tone for the whole project.
Absolutely. You, as I said, you set the tone at the beginning, and clients just respect it. It gives them the boundaries. They understand when things are going to be delivered, when they need to have refinements back. Like, it just sets a tone that everyone knows what's happening. Whereas I think sometimes as women, there's a lot of people pleasing. I don't want to appear hard work. I'll just keep it simple. Oh, they want this and I'll just do that for them. It just gets messy, and the client gets just as frustrated as you get burnt out. And because of the, it's just it's a messy experience, and it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, one of the other things that you said, which I was like, oh my goodness, I've seen this so many times, where it's like people, it's like, it's just a friend, or it's my sister-in-law, or, it's a school mum kind of thing. And so they take they don't stick to their process, and because they're like, oh, it's not quite a client, or it's just someone. And it's like, no, like, doesn't matter who it is, it's the same process every single time.
Yeah, because then you'll get resentful because you probably haven't charged them enough. And I see that there wasn't enough hours, or the hourly rate was discounted, or you skipped the onboarding to make it quicker and easier. You're actually doing the client a disservice as well. And, for me, I've worked with a number of my friends. Everyone pays exactly the same thing, onboards the same way, has the same steps, has the same homework. It's the same for everyone, because that's how we're going to get the best outcome, and that's why it's going to work best. And that's something I want for my clients as well.
Yeah. And I think that's really interesting as well. It is actually about the outcome, because you, as the professional, you have put together this process because you know that is how the client is going to get the best outcome. And so if you are putting, your school mum friend not through the whole process, they're actually not going to get the best outcome. And then you're not going to look the best, and they're not going to want to refer you to someone else, kind of thing. So I think flipping it and actually thinking about the outcome rather than it's just a friend, so we don't need to do all of that part of it, is a really great way of thinking about it and reframing it.
It is, because as service-based, we're here to solve problems. So what is the client's problem? Great, we're going to solve that. What's the best way to do that? And we are here to educate people on how that works. They're here to educate us on how it works, because they don't know. They've never done the work. So I know that there'll be a lot of fear come up, and women say, oh, but if I do that, they'll leave or they'll go somewhere else. Well, if they do, and if they don't want to pay or sign it, great, red flag. You've dodged a massive bullet. Let them go. So that's a blessing.
Yeah.
And that's there. It's going to tell you in the onboarding, are they the right fit? Do they respect you? Are they going to follow your process? And if not, don't have the desperation of no one else will come along, so I'm just going to grab them, because 99% of the time, those are the people that are going to burn you, who aren't going to pay, who are going to cause issues, who are going to go to, fair trading, whatever. You know what I mean? There's issues. I've seen it. I've seen issues, and lawyers get involved with designers. So they're the people that, if our gut says no and they're being really hard work at onboarding, maybe just have a real think about how much we want them in our business as well, because this is not a week turnaround. This is 3, 6, 9, 12 months, 2 years we're hanging out with these people. There's got to be a mutual respect there.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness, so much good stuff there. Oh, so Kate, tell me, what are you looking forward to in the next 12 months for your business?
Oh, so many things. Well, some beautiful podcast guest interviews, which I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you, Beth. Some
Yeah.
interviews. I'm hosting a retreat 4 weeks today. I will be on retreat, probably heading to the spa with a drink in hand in 4 weeks' time with 8 beautiful ladies. I've got a speaking event in Sydney. It's sort of a little closed group one later in the year. My husband and I are creating something together, probably Q1 of next year. And there's a few other things I'm launching, and then probably another retreat next year. So there's a lot of the things that I have wanted to do that I'm now feeling really ready to expand into. I didn't do them on timelines of you should be doing this 3 or 4 years in. I'm doing them on when it feels really right for me, and I'm really ready to expand now. So yeah, really excited for the next chapter and helping more women in deeper ways.
Sounds awesome. Sounds like a very fun and rewarding 12 months ahead.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I hope so. And it's one that's very well planned to make it work, to still have space for me and my husband and my health, but also the things that I want to do to help my clients and to grow this business. And yeah, I want to help more people, and I want to spread the word a lot more, because I think that there's a lot of changes as women that we can make in business to support us with our health, our foundations, and then the client journey.
So good, so good. Oh, thank you so much, Kate, for joining me today. I have absolutely loved our chat.
Thank you, Beth. I'm very, very grateful.
Thank you for listening to this design dialogue. I hope you have found it full of inspiration and helpful information to take into your design studio. If you like the podcast and want to hear more, consider sharing it or writing a review, as it helps us reach more people, and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. If you would like to unlock the power of effortless studio management and elevate your design business to new heights, please follow the links in our show notes to see how more time to design can help you build a better business. Have a great week, and I will see you for our next design dialogue.